Hi, it's Tony Malz here, CEO of Sizigi. I'm so excited for our next guest. Her name is Veronica Ikosipanterhos, and she has crossed the chasm. And what I mean by that is she spent 5 years in internal audit and then somehow found her way into recruiting. So let's hear her story.
Hi. Okay, so I'll correct you. It is Ikosipanterhos. It is a mouthful. I totally understand that. So I'm not going to, hold you accountable to that for right now. But the next 4 months, have to have it in sharp. Okay, gotta get it. Yes, so I am happy to be part of the Sizigi family. You're absolutely right. I did go into auditing right out of college, and then about 5 years later, it took me 5 years to realize that auditing was probably not the career path I wanted, and I wanted to help people more and really help them launch their career. So I decided to go into recruiting, and here I am.
Great. So what were some of the companies that you worked for in internal audit?
I started off my my career with a company called PennyMac. It's a now public mortgage company over in the LA area. And then I worked typically on some quality assurance operational audits, then relocated from LA to San Diego and worked for Illumina. Great company. I'm really happy I got that experience there. Did some SOX auditing. I was a staff internal auditor at the time. And SOX and operational audits were my main focus, a little bit of policy and procedure creation and updating. And then I went from Illumina to a company called Nortech, and they are a manufacturing company. They were public and went private the day that I joined. So my position as a SOX compliance analyst became obsolete. So I mainly focused on operational audits. That company wasn't doing as well. So I decided to move again to Sharp Healthcare. And there I was a senior internal auditor, and I was doing operational audits. It is a non-for-profit organization, so there is no SOX work, but I focus a lot on government grants, non-for-profit, a lot of hospital audits. So it was interesting. It was very fun, but 6 months into that career, into that job, I decided that I wanted to go into recruiting.
And in internal audit, it seems like you worked for a few different industries. Is it the same at each job in a different industry, or is internal audit completely different?
I would say internal audit as a whole is similar. It's pretty much like you're going to be doing every year. You'll probably do the same audits. It's the exact same layout. You have the kickoff meeting. You have different testing you're going to do, and then closing meeting. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into that, but it's pretty much the same structure. Depending on the company, whether they're public, private, non-for-profit, you're going to be testing different things, auditing different departments. The type of audits will be different. Deadlines will be different. So when you deep dive into the details, they're different. But internal audit as a whole, you're basically auditing the company to making sure that the financials that are being recorded are accurate and timely. So that is on a very high level, it's the same.
And then how did you end up in internal audit? So you were in college and you were just applying for jobs across all different fields?
No, it's funny. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But no, I come from a family of accountants. I should actually say a family of external auditors and internal auditors, but definitely a family of CPAs. So my dad was a CPA, my cousin's a CPA, my mom was in banking, sort of finance area. So they helped kind of direct my major to do something at least lucrative. I really didn't want to be like a doctor or a lawyer or anything. So I was good with numbers, and they suggested I go into accounting. They kind of like pushed me in that direction, and I'm grateful that they did. So I majored in accounting and economics at UCSB. But I know I didn't want to go into economics unless I'm getting my PhD. I really didn't know what to do with that major. So I really focused on the accounting portion of that. However, in studying accounting, I realized this is extremely dry and I don't want to be an accountant forever. But also too, it's funny because in college, they don't, other than giving you like one tax class or one auditing class or maybe a few finance classes, majoring in accounting doesn't teach you exactly what you're going to be doing in your career. So students a lot of times have no idea what to expect when they go into the real world. Because yes, you're getting a technical skill, but you're not understanding, okay, in a company, this is how accounting works. Like this is what you're going to be doing day in, day out, as opposed to this is where debits and credits go. So, and learning like the financials. So I picked people's brains and asked, what do you do as an accountant? What do you do as an auditor? I had mentioned earlier before, my cousin was an internal auditor, or still is actually. So I actually wound up interning for UC Riverside through her. And that's another story I can deep dive into later. But I wound up working with her at UCR as an intern in internal audit department. And it is a lot of talking to people. Obviously, you're talking to different departments, having to get their documentation, whatnot. And then it is some analysis work and testing and documentation. So I actually sort of enjoyed it, for the 3 months I did it. I liked it, enough to decide, okay, you know what? This may be a good career path for me, just because I really don't know what else I could do that I'm like very passionate about. And at the time, recruiting, it's not like you can major in recruiting. I did not know that was a career path I'd eventually go into. So for the time being, I thought, okay, well, if I'm majoring in accounting and finance or accounting and economics, I'm going to have to go in either economics or the accounting field. So audit was the next best thing. So when I graduated with my degree, I was lucky enough to have a connection at the mortgage company, and I applied in their quality assurance / audit / operations department. And that's how I started my career.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, probably myself and much of our audience, when we see internal audit knock on our office door, we pretend we're busy, right?
I got bad cop. Yeah.
Tell me some tips. What are some tips to other internal auditors on how they can win over the business or their business partners?
So I've always believed it takes time to form a relationship, right? I mean, you're not going to just walk up to somebody and automatically have their trust or automatically be BFF, best friends with the person. So if you're going to ask for documentation or give them bad news that maybe they're not doing their processes correctly, you don't want to lead off with the negative. You always want to leave it off with the positive. Ask how they're doing, how long they've been in the company, establish relationships, be warm, be smiling, be welcoming, be somebody that you would want to be around. That's the best advice I can give to somebody, especially somebody in audit, external or internal. You are there to help the business, obviously, but in order to help the business, yes, you're giving them positive feedback, but you're really focusing on the negative feedback that they can improve on, which is why a lot of times internal audits deemed the bad cops. Nobody wants to talk to auditors. They're annoying. All they do is cause more work, which can be true. But in order to win people over and have them be more receptive to the feedback that you're giving them, you want to be nice. And if you can establish relationships and communicate well and be friendly and have people like you around, they're going to be a lot more receptive to actually implementing those processes that you're suggesting, open to, getting the feedback, having their manager look at that, because it's a direct reflection of them and their work as well. So it's you want to try and take something that's negative feedback and switch it into something that can be positive. So I would say the best advice to give somebody going into audit would be to have really good communication skills, personality skills, being able to connect with a person one-on-one and really form those relationships. Because even to this day, not being in audit, I can still go back to people that I used to work with at PennyMac or at Illumina, at Nortec, Sharp, and hang out with them as if we're buddies. And I was an auditor auditing their department. But they don't look at it that way. They look at it as, oh, it's a friend. I really liked talking to you and enjoyed your time, and you're a great auditor and I appreciate you, but I really like you as a person. That's how you should leave every audit is, okay, the person that I worked with enjoyed my company.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. Mm-hmm. With all my dealings with internal or external auditors, the best ones are where, hey, let's work through this issue together and get to a great outcome versus, aha, you didn't do this.
Yeah, gotcha. No,
right.
You don't want to do that. Yeah.
So after 5 years, you decided to make a career change.
I did. It was a risk. I've always been, I was raised in a household, and I don't know if this is just my parents or if it's just the generation, but it was the mentality of you stay in a company and you just grow within that company, and you climb the ladder and eventually you just move up the chain, right? I feel like in today's society, it's about taking risks. So when my parents had always kind of, as again, like I told you, they had directed me into the major that I wanted in college. But outside of college too, I've always been close with them, and they would always tell me, stick to a company and grow within. So even though I jumped around, I stayed within audit. And I didn't want to venture out too much or take too many risks because, financially, I was worried about that. Being in San Diego, it's expensive. I didn't want to mess up my career. Just a lot of what ifs and unknowns, unanswered questions I was not willing to risk and not have a steady, stable job. Okay, so fast forward to a year and a half ago, I was so miserable in audit where I said, you know what, it's about time that I just take a risk. And if it works out, fantastic. If it doesn't, well, I learned and I can always just go back into audit. So I decided the risk of jumping careers and actually being extremely happy and feeling a sense of purpose and a passion for what I'm doing was more important than the paycheck. And I reached out to my network, again, a relationship that I established in audit. At the time, my coworker at Illumina was a contractor there, and she worked for the recruiting company Vaco. And so when I reached back out to her after I had left Illumina, I asked her, I picked her brain. I said, tell me about recruiting. Do you like it? Has it been lucrative? Do you enjoy coming to work every day? And she told me like the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I trusted her just because I liked her as a person, but I also knew Vaco had a really good reputation in San Diego. So I decided, you know what, let's just go for it. And I decided to make that change in August of 2018. And I haven't looked back since.
Fantastic. So there's 20,000 recruiting firms and tons of recruiters. Yes. What are things that you think are important to a candidate when you reach out to them on why that opportunity might be right for them?
So there's a few things. It's funny you say that there are 20,000 firms. That doesn't surprise me. Recruiters, and I don't mean to belittle at all, but we're a dime a dozen. There's a million recruiters. Everyone is, hey, I got this great opportunity for you. Well, that's great. Is it really a good opportunity? Or are you trying to make a quota? Are you trying to meet like a sales number? So I always told myself, because when I was in audit, I would get contacted by recruiters all the time on LinkedIn or actually really mainly LinkedIn. So I'd get recruiter emails. And a lot of the times, I'll never forget, I was a senior internal auditor and I got an opportunity, a quote unquote opportunity for a CFO position. Okay. I was so just annoyed with that email. I'm like, you did not even take the time to look at my profile. I know I'm part of a mass blast of just great opportunities. So when I decided to join recruiting, I told myself I am not going to be that recruiter that sends mass emails, that blasts people with opportunities that really aren't there, or that tells people that I have a great position for you that's completely irrelevant to what they're doing. I mean, unless they want to do a career change, but that's separate. So I decided I'm going to take the time and take the time to read everyone's profile that I decide to connect with and send them a message and a personalized message. So, and I've gone as far as if I see on their LinkedIn that they speak Russian, I will literally Google Russian terms so I can create a sentence and get their attention, because that shows I took the time to actually get to know what they do or who they are based on what I have on LinkedIn and connect with them on a personal level. And I truly believe that contributes to my success in placing people, because I'm not just looking to fill a number. And I also tell them too, look, I did not switch careers for the money. I switched careers because I truly like to help people. And so I think if you show your authentic side and the fact that you're there to truly help them, and then take the time to get to know the person, that will contribute to a successful recruiter, as opposed to just someone who's trying to crank out numbers, get that commission check, just make placements, put a person in a seat. That may work out in the immediate, but in the long haul and having connections and growing your network, you're going to fall short.
That is so true. Professionals want to be presented with greater opportunities, but it's so often they're presented with opportunities that make zero sense, a step backwards. And like you said, you feel like a commission. So how many candidates have you talked to over your last year and a half, 2 years? Oh,
my gosh, hundreds. I mean, people that I've spoken to at least over 1,000 at least. Sometimes it's just a very quick conversation, like, nice to meet you. I'm not interested. And that's as far as the conversation goes. I've worked with people for 6-7 months who are still trying to find positions. Unfortunately, the market's been a little rough for them. But I'm still working with them. I've talked to people who I have placed immediately, and we still keep in contact. It's very important for me to follow up. That was one of the biggest complaints. I mean, when I first started my recruiting career, I asked people that I met, what is your biggest frustration with recruiting or with recruiters? Because the stereotypical person will say, ugh, recruiters, I can't. Like they're annoying, or they don't know what they're talking about. That's the biggest thing. They don't know what they're talking about, or I never hear back. I'll send you my resume. I'll send you my information. So great. Now you have all this information about me in your database, and you tell me you have an opportunity, and I never hear back from you. So I made a point to follow up with all the people that I spoke to. And maybe it might have taken me a couple months just because I'm like, oh yeah, I need to check in with that person. But I'd always resort back to checking in with them. And so my network's expanded, but I'd say just an initial conversation with one person, at least over 1,000, and just in the last year and a half. There's a lot of people in San Diego. People don't realize that, but it's a pretty big city.
Yeah, I didn't really know what ghosting was until I started having to look for jobs over last year. Yeah. I'd have calls with recruiters, and all of a sudden they'd go silent. I'd follow up with emails, nothing. And it's just interesting. What's your feelings on ghosting these
It's
days? Funny
because I feel like ghosting is such a modern term. It's like that millennial term. It can be used in recruiting. It can be used in dating. Like, oh, he ghosted me. But ghosting is a very real thing. Unfortunately, I think too many people on the recruiting side don't do enough to follow up with either the clients or their candidates or just anyone they're talking to. And people, I understand people get busy. Things come up. I mean, I've had people where I don't hear from them for months, and I've reached out to them and it's like, where'd you go? And I know I didn't do anything wrong. I'm following up. And, some people just don't want to be bothered, and things change for them. I get that. But I do think that ghosting occurs because either the salesperson or the recruiter is not doing enough to follow up with them in the initial phase. So for instance, if I'm talking to you and you have an open position and I'm trying to work with you, I want to establish a relationship with you and make a connection and really, again, make our relationship a personal one, because you're going to trust me more. You're going to know that I have the best intentions for you. If I just come at you with, hey, let's work together and let me place a job for you, you don't know me. So it's very easy for you to just walk away and say, well, I'm just going to go with a recruiter that I know. Well, how about I become a recruiter that you know, so we can work together, and you won't have that intention or that inclination to just kind of push me to the side and ghost me, and you'd want to work with me. So unfortunately, I do think it falls on both sides, but I definitely think that the recruiting industry as a whole, salespeople and recruiters, they don't do enough to really form that bond, that relationship, that trusting relationship with clients or candidates. And that's why ghosting occurs. Because I have to be honest, I've seen it a lot of times on the client side, and I understand it's difficult to do because you're working with so many people. But on the candidate side, because I've taken the approach of quality over quantity, I don't feel like as if I've gotten ghosted very often by people, because again, I take that time to really get to know them.
Great. So you've talked to thousands of candidates. What are, and we're in a low unemployment economy right now. What are some of the key things that candidates are looking for from, future potential employers?
I would say, so again, I think it varies by generation. I see different things based on the person that I'm speaking to. So if it's someone more tenured in their career, they're mainly looking for work-life balance. They're looking for more of a title. They're looking for, they don't want to do a lateral move. They want a paycheck. And understood. I get that. So we try and make that work. When it comes to the younger generation, they're really looking for a cultural fit. Will I enjoy working with these people day in, day out? I'm not just here to collect a paycheck. It's more of quality of life for me. I need to have the whole package. I remember placing somebody, and he was a great candidate, and he took the CPA exam and scored in the 95 percentile in all 4 exams. That's extremely hard to do. And he had a good background as far as, his employers, but he wanted to leave because he wanted a challenge. He felt like he was bored in his current role, but he's like, I really want to be able to take my dog to work. That was a huge thing for him. And I want to be able to have work-life balance where if I need to run to an appointment or I need to go home for whatever reason, I can do that and enjoy the people I work with. It wasn't even about, he never once mentioned pay, which obviously that's important. And I wasn't going to try and short him, but his main priorities were the dog, which I can understand, and just work-life balance, flexibility. So it took a while. It took about, I'd say 6 months of just keeping in touch, telling him that, hey, I still have an eye out for you. And I finally found a position for him that allowed for him to bring his dog to work. Granted, it was a startup company, so it allowed for that flexibility. I mean, I feel like most established corporations aren't like, hey, yeah, bring all your pets to work. But we were able to, or I was able to make that match. And so I think that it's a generational difference. But if I had to pick one thing that I see common throughout people that I work with, it would have to be work-life balance. That's key in anyone's happiness. Because if you're working 80-hour weeks, that's great, but it's not sustainable. And it no matter where you are in your career, that's something that's like very, very desired.
Yeah, I think I've noticed that paradigm change as well, managing a large global team. It's, if you simply empower and trust employees and give them the flexibility of when to be in office, when to work from home, the returns you get out of that is tremendous compared to forcing them to be in office between 8 to 5.
Oh, yeah. I feel like the typical 9 to 5 schedule is slowly dying.
Right.
Everyone seems to want remote work and just that, even if it's not remote work, flexibility at least. So,
let's say 2 years of recruiting. What are some of the things that hiring managers or the requirements they're looking for in candidates?
Oh, it depends truly on the where you go in finance. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are actually still focused very heavily on the CPA. If you don't have CPA, the license, or actively working towards it, whether you're in audit and finance and accounting, it seems to still hold a lot of weight. That will really hinder your ability to maybe beat somebody out who has their CPA, but maybe doesn't have as strong of industry experience or even public accounting. That CPA is gold. So I see that as a big factor. Another thing that companies are looking for is that desire to grow within the company. They want somebody who's not just going to be in there to collect a paycheck and leave. They want somebody who's going to believe in the company, believe in the mission, grow within, help the company grow. That is key for them. So it's almost also too a cultural fit. Like they're looking for a perfect match. It's almost like we are overpaid matchmakers where the candidate is looking for that work-life balance, a great cultural fit, but also from the client side, they're looking for people to fill the seat who are going to help the business grow and really believe, and not just there to, collect a paycheck, like I said.
Yeah, I love that you say that. I've interviewed a lot of people, and a resume is pretty much just showing the past. And when you hire someone, you're not hiring someone for their past. You're hiring them for what are they going to be over the next 3 to 5 years.
Right, their potential,
Their
right?
potential. So you want to skate to where the puck's going.
Right.
So
right.
look for high performance, high upside, high reward.
Yeah, definitely.
So, are there any hot skills that hiring managers are looking for out of candidates right now in accounting or audit?
Hot skills. It's funny. A lot of people, now that we're moving into a digital age, I feel like a lot of people are relying heavily on ERP system experience. So you can have, good company background, have your CPA. At the end of the day, your CPA is just a license. So it doesn't really tell employers like, hey, I'm really great at accounting. It basically tells you, okay, your skill, you're very technical, and you're a great test taker, but it doesn't say, okay, I've explored this ERP system, or I've touched on these books or done these reconciliations. So I would say the biggest thing that hiring managers are looking for right now is a wide variety of systems that accountants have worked in, whether it's Great Plains, SAP, JDE, Oracle, all those things, Mass 500, all those ERP systems, that's huge right now, super hot. So the more systems that people have touched, the better off you'll probably be.
So you have great experience now, 7 years or so into your career, a couple internships, 5 years in internal audit across a couple companies, and now a couple years in financial recruiting. What would you give advice to yourself 7 years ago?
Oh, take a risk. Take that risk. It's funny. So my cousin, I would say, is within my family, probably the biggest risk taker. And I really admire her for this, because if she takes the approach of, I'm going to go for it and I'm going to try my hardest. And if it fails, it fails. And I'll get back up on my feet. And she taught me that throughout my college career. So she helped me kind of take a risk with my internship that I did at UC Riverside, because the whole, to give a very high level detail, or have a high level overview of that internship, basically UCSB didn't have an internship program in their internal audit department. So I worked with her, because she worked in internal audit at UC Riverside. I worked with her to basically allow for me to work at UC Riverside, having not been a student, to work in their internal audit department in their internship program. And basically take that knowledge and apply it back to UCSB and ask the director of internal audit at UCSB if I can create the internship program there. So it was very creative. And I thought, he may say no. He may just say like, shoo off, student, like I don't want your business, but it worked. And it was because I took that risk. I think that if I had told myself maybe 7 years ago, take a risk, maybe minor in something else, take a risk and maybe major in something that you like truly love, or, maybe apply to a position that I didn't think that I was qualified for in my career. I would just say my biggest piece of advice for the younger generation coming out of college is just take that risk. You never know what opportunities or what doors it's going to open for you. And the worst they can say is no, and everything is fixable. So even if they say no, you can still recover somehow. So take that risk.
I think that's great advice. I myself, about 20 years, most of it's been at multi-billion-dollar software companies. And I always thought my career, I had to be a certain thing and had to map out a certain way. And what you realize is you have to take risks, and that's how you grow. And speaking of which, we find ourselves here today, right?
Yes,
With
this
Sizigi.
is a huge risk.
So, what brought you to Sizigi? What are some of the core things that resonated with you?
Yeah. So when I went to Vaco, again, Vaco's a great company. I think what they're doing is fantastic. However, I did see a pattern throughout just the recruiting world in general, that there's too much reliance on a paper resume. Hiring managers are relying too much on bullet points rather than the person itself. And going back to what hiring managers and job seekers are looking for is a cultural fit. Well, how are you supposed to get to know somebody based off a paper or piece of paper and information on that piece of paper, which you don't even know if it's accurate or if it's, just fluff. So I thought that the hiring process, at least the way it's done now, is becoming very antiquated. I don't believe that we should make judgments of people based on what's on a paper resume. And there needs to be more human to human interaction, because that's truly how you're going to get a good gauge of if you're hiring the right person or if you're going to go into the right company. So when you approached me a few months ago about Sizigi and the idea behind it, and how we really want to have professionals connecting professionals and using a platform to basically connect people via video, which is very hot right now with TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram stories. I mean, video content is the new modern 2020 way of doing things. So when I heard that you wanted to create this platform, kind of disrupt the hiring process, take that risk and allow professionals to connect via video and really have a true professional platform to do so, I thought it was very interesting. I will admit, at the first time I heard it, I'm like, what is the company? I'm like, wait, let me just get the pronunciation down correctly, right? I mean, it's kind of wild.
It's almost like your last name.
Yeah, I was actually thinking it, but no, it's very creative, and it gets people wondering what is Sizigi? So that's to answer your question. That is what drew me to it. That it's different, it's innovative, it's modern, and it allows for people to connect. I'm very much into obviously connection and creating that personal relationship with everyone, gain your trust, get to know the person, and then make that connection. And so Sizigi allows for that, whereas the current hiring process does not.
Yeah, so we're very excited that you joined.
Oh, thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
As we look and as we wrap this up, let's look forward. What are some of your goals in 2020? What are some of your goals over the next 5 to 7 years?
2020, I would say my immediate goal is just to get this thing going, get it started, grow the company. In the next 3 to 5, 7 years, I'd love to have a team where I can manage a few people. I can have people in other parts of California, even other parts of the nation, working on roles, whether it's in Chicago, New York, Miami, like LA, SF. There's so many different companies that are nationwide that we could grow our business and help place people there too. Because as long as we have Wi-Fi, we can do our job. If we have a working phone and a working laptop, we can do it. So that would be my goal in the future, is to build a team, different areas, have people working with me, basically empowering the professional journey and spreading the word and making people, or allowing people to get their dream career, dream job.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah.
When we pushed you into the pool to see whether you sink or swim, we know you're a world-class swimmer and you're going to do great.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, no, it was definitely no pun intended, but it's the easiest thing I can relate to. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and let's kill 2020.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.